You're listening to the Sex and Psychology Podcast, the sex ed you never got in school and won't get anywhere else. I am your host, Dr. Justin Lane Miller. I am a social psychologist and research fellow at the Kinsey Institute and author of the book, Tell Me What You Want, The Science of Sexual Desire and How It Can Help You Improve Your Sex Life. Until recently, menopause was something that people didn't talk about very much. But things are changing. Menopause is suddenly in the spotlight, with growing attention to its impact on everything from sexual health and well-being to work, relationships, and quality of life. And central to the new conversations we've been having around menopause are hormones. For decades, there's been a lot of fear and confusion surrounding hormone therapy. Much of this can be traced back to the Women's Health Initiative study published in the early 2000s, which dramatically changed the way that hormone therapy was perceived and prescribed. Today, scientists are revisiting that history, while a new generation is pushing for better information, better care, and greater choice when it comes to managing menopause. My guest is Alicia Rose, an award-winning director and the founder of Menopause, a documentary, podcast, and activist movement championing hormonal education, access, and reproductive justice. A prolific filmmaker with deep roots as both a musician and indie music industry leader, she has directed more than 36 music videos for global artists. In today's show, we're talking about how menopause became so misunderstood, the lasting fallout from the controversy surrounding hormone therapy, and why the conversation is finally beginning to change. This is going to be a fascinating conversation about hormones, health, autonomy, and what it means to rethink menopause for a new generation. Stick around and we're going to jump in right after the break. Ever wondered how sex differs around the world? Come study it with me. Join me and Sexual Health Alliance for an immersive study abroad experience where we explore sexuality, psychology, culture, and science firsthand. You'll learn from international experts, travel to incredible places, and connect with students from around the globe. Since 2015, Sexual Health Alliance has been at the forefront of sexuality education, and you can be part of it. Join me, Shaw, and a global community of students for a transformative study abroad adventure. Later this year, we're heading to Berlin and Copenhagen, both of which are beautiful cities to experience and full of incredible learning opportunities. Spots are limited, so head to sexualhealthalliance.com to learn more and reserve yours. Come explore the world and the science of sex with me. Hi, Alicia, and welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here. So you're working on a documentary called Menopause, and you have a podcast by the same name. So let's start with what's behind the name. What is a menopause, and why did punk feel like the right framework for telling a story about menopause?
I mean, right? Well, menopause really came from my ADHD stem of kind of putting menopause specialist and punk together. But it really came to being after I went to this menopause conference here in Portland called the very first Portland Menopause Conference, hosted by my friend and now participant in the film, Dr. Aoife O'Sullivan. After that, I kind of realized, oh my God, the doctors are as screwed in this whole conversation as the punks. Everybody's kind of equally as sort of ignored and horrified at the whole scenario. Hardly anybody has education. So I just saw a lot of connection between actually like the providers, clinicians, and the people. Like we're all in the same bucket of a hellscape of menopause together.
Yeah. So let's talk about that hellscape and kind of like how we got here. So, part of the story that you tell in the film is about the fallout from the 2002 Women's Health Initiative study. And for people who might not be familiar with that particular study, can you explain what its significance is and, tell us a little bit about how to this day it's still having an impact on how menopause is understood and treated?
Absolutely. It's insane that something that happened 24 years ago could still be screwing up women's health. But here we are in 2026. Well, in case you don't know, the Women's Health Initiative study actually began in the early 90s when a Democratic administration was in play. This is the Clinton administration. And I think it was like the year of the woman in 92 or 91 or something. And they'd finally appointed the very first female head of the National Institute for Health, which was a big deal. Still, if we had one now, it would be a big deal. That was huge. And that sort of begat this study called the Women's Health Initiative Study, which was actually a cardiovascular study studying women over the ages of 50. So all menopausal women, postmenopausal women, generally to the ages of 50 and like 80 or even higher, almost all with cardiovascular risk factors because of the fact that it was a cardiovascular study. And please correct me if I'm wrong, Justin, you're a doctor, not me. But they brought in a wing of hormones to also figure out the efficacy of hormones on older bodies. Because up to this point in the 90s, hormones were a big deal. By 1993, I think 23% of women and people assigned female at birth were accessing hormones. It's funny because the conversation then and the conversation now are very similar. It's like, wait a minute, hormones, can I take them till I die? Is this going to make me feel better? I mean, what? It's not going to give me cancer? So, this was the conversation back then. Like, this could change the world if women didn't have to feel like absolute hot garbage in middle age. What would shift? So there's a lot of interest, I think, even from the Democratic Congress at that point to figure out for those Congress people in their 50s, could we still be taking these hormones that we started that really helped us evade the worst symptoms of middle age, of menopause, specifically in perimenopause. So they decided to start a study and they enlisted over 165,000 women in this study with, Justin, I don't know if you know this, with the help of the Golden Girls. They were the spokespeople, which is a factoid I found out from Dr. Robert Langer, who was on that study as a scientist and researcher.
Fun fact.
Yeah, fun fact. 165,000 women were brought into this, and there was a whole press campaign of like, help your mother, help your sister, help your friend, help yourself. This is going to change the world. Really, in that whole early 90s third wave feminism, like the future is ours kind of narrative, that's how this study was sold. Well, fast forward 2002. Those are the sound of brakes screeching. Of course, we had 9/11, which was just such a horrible, horrible tragedy in 2001. But we were also at that point in a very Republican administration who had very different ideas about what kind of care women should be receiving and what that looked like. And by 2002, we have 40% of women and people assigned female at birth on hormones. So the numbers are raising, right? A lot, like 23 to 40. That's almost double, really. Incredible within 10 years, right? So I have my own thoughts about what happened. And I tell you that some of the research I've done has led me to really believe that the results of the Women's Health Initiative were purposefully manipulated specifically to go to press and to the public to take a far outlying, non-statistically significant result of one woman who developed breast cancer, had a high cardiovascular risk, who did have a case of breast cancer. They took that very small risk of cancer. The study had stopped for an abundance of caution, which makes sense given that most studies, if anything happens, they just take a second to reevaluate. But the dude who ran this study, his name is Jacques Rousseau. He made an executive decision that we have since found out probably involved other people, including people more than likely entered this Republican administration. They decided what the results of the study were going to be. They decided what the report was going to be. The administration of the study wrote this report saying that hormone therapy caused breast cancer, even though if you look under the hood of even, Journal of American Medicine or the study that actually came out, the real results were buried in there. But the headline was that hormone therapy caused breast cancer. And that was taken to press, to the New York Times, to the Today Show. And suddenly this Republican Congress got what they wanted, which was, a win on spending $1 billion on the biggest study of women's health to this day ever. So the Republicans got to walk away with, hey, everybody, that thing, that Premarin, they're not even the same hormones we're using now, but, Premarin and medroxyprogestin acetate, that was the standard. That was what was used in the Women's Health Initiative. Hey, everybody, you know how that made you feel like a human being during menopause when you thought you were going to feel terrible? Oops, psych, taking that away. Mm-hmm. So they did this to that huge amount of women in 2002. And unfortunately, that misinformation has continued to proliferate. I mean, we live in a world now that is so full of misinformation. We're so used to it. We know what it is. But back in 2002, Justin, we didn't really even have the internet like we have now. So I think that's why it continues to affect women's health today, is that it was playing on our worst fear, that the thing that was making us feel good was going to kill us. And they scored a win. And in the context of that win, systemically disempowered over 2 generations, 3 generations, 4 generations, 2.5 decades worth of women, not just in the States, but worldwide, because we're the gold standard. If we say that hormone therapy causes breast cancer, everybody's freaking out all over the world. So that misinformation, unfortunately, still very much exists in the world, but we're working really hard to rip the veil off with Menopause.
Yeah. So it turns out that the study that we were talking about, the Women's Health Initiative trials, they really dramatically overestimated the risk of cancer associated with use of hormone replacement therapy. We now recognize that that's wrong, it's incorrect, but the misinformation is still out there and people still associate hormones with danger. And the result of that is that the number of women who are taking hormone replacement therapy during menopause has just plummeted. It went from being 20, 30 some percent down to low single digits, right? So it did have this real lasting impact in terms of how many women were actually using it. And, still to this day, it's a pretty low number who are on hormones. It's starting to increase again, but it's nowhere near the level it would have been had we not had the Women's Health Initiative results come out. So since you've been making this film and running a podcast talking all about this subject, from speaking with patients and medical experts, what have you learned about what women lost or missed out on when hormone therapy became something that people were just too afraid to use?
I got to be honest, the reason why I even started this project really in earnest was when I call it hormonally radicalized by my doctor, now my doctor friends and participants in the film. Shout out to Dr. Aoife O'Sullivan, who really she's my meno mother, as it were. And she really, I think, opened my eyes to how much worse the situation was than I even possibly, as just a regular person, human being, could imagine. And that shocked me to such a degree that I was like, well, I've got to, ring the bell so that everybody knows how screwed up this is. But the cost of losing 24 years of access to hormone therapy has been truly incalculable. Mm-hmm. I particularly connect it directly to the slide into authoritarianism. What is happening, right? We worked so hard for LGBTQIA rights. We've worked so hard for women's rights, for the right to abortion, for the right to reproductive care, for the right to reproductive justice. I mean, these are things that are we felt, especially for those of us, Gen X people, we felt we're just enshrined into our realities for the rest of the world. But no, without the ERA, you kind of get nothing at the end of the day. And there's a wedge in to do all of that. So the numbers that I've heard, Justin, are really terrifying. And I'm going to relate them to your audience because it'll probably terrify them too. But the low estimate of women that died for not receiving access to hormone therapy or menopause hormone therapy, and that is estradiol, progesterone, and for some of us, testosterone. The low estimate is in the hundreds of thousands of women who died. We really can't even estimate it because it's so massive. And it also, if you don't know, you have hormone receptors in every cell of your body. Mm-hmm. So depending on your own genetic makeup, not having estrogen could mean it leads you to dementia, or not having estrogen in your body or progesterone could lead you to Alzheimer's or heart disease, or you break a hip because of osteoporosis. And a lot of the worst parts of the menopause transition happens right around when you go into that transition, because your body goes from hell yeah, estrogen, let's go, to, Dr. Rachel Rubin describes it in the most profound way, which is that it is a castration event. So do the math. Justin mentioned the number is low. Well, the number still talked about as the amount of women and people AFAB that are accessing hormone therapy is 5%. So if we're talking about 95% of women for the past 24 years not having access to the one course of medication that could be transformative for them and could help avoid a gazillion other maladies that we attribute to COVID, long COVID, or autoimmune disease, or a million other things, right? So I don't know, do the math with me. That's a lot of women, right? How many women, besides the ones that died, suffered or continue to suffer? It's in the millions. It's almost incalculable. So I look at it from, okay, what was the cost culturally? There's a lot of women who didn't make those albums, or weren't able to direct films, or who weren't able to paint, or who weren't able to write their books or whatever, because they felt so ass crappy on that couch, not knowing what the F was wrong with them, that they had no support. They didn't make those creative things. What's the cost socially, societally? Less women in the workforce, less women, in politics, less women in positions of power. It's ironic because in your 40s and 50s, really, that's our most powerful phase of life, without a doubt. Not physically, but also, some of us have finished the hardest part of having families, or, we've worked up to that point in our careers where now we're the boss and we're killing it, or, we're somewhere where we're proud of. We work so hard to be there, and we're the smartest we've been. We're the most capable. Yet we are castrated without our choice being a part of it by our biology because we are living longer and we probably shouldn't even be here anyway. So, the cost is massive. I think it relates to where we're at now with democracy. And if we reclaim hormone therapy, and not just hormone therapy, but the narrative and the story and, the truth about what actually hormone therapy can do to your body and, how transformative it can be, we have the chance to change that. But the cost is massive. It's really depressing, quite frankly. But we are in a unique moment because of the FDA in November, aren't we?
We are. And we'll get into talking more about that in a moment. But I just wanted to touch on a point that you raised about how menopause has a lot of potential downstream effects and impacts. When people hear about menopause, if they associate one thing with it, it's usually hot flashes. Like menopause usually gets reduced to just that one thing. And if people talk about it further, they might talk about some of the sexual health and function side effects. Like we hear about vaginal atrophy and things like that and so forth. And
fun stuff.
Yeah. And so, and we've talked previously on the show about menopause's effects on sexual health and how hormone therapy can help with it. But I think you make the important point that it's not just about hot flashes or sexual health. It's also like how you feel and show up in everyday life and what you can do in terms of performance on the job. And so in the story that you're telling in this film, where you're following a lot of artists and musicians, menopause had a significant impact on their ability to create art, right?
Well, I'm a musician, so it really came from me feeling that first and foremost. Because I, in my community, Justin, am known as a bit of a whirling dervish, as it were, creatively, a multi-hyphenate, multifaceted artist, right? I'm a filmmaker, I'm a photographer, I'm a musician. I've been a music industry leader. I edit, I do a lot of things, right? And I've been known for this my whole life. It's sort of my spiel, right? Like I do all these things. But let me tell you, about 3 years ago, I wasn't doing anything besides wondering what the hell was going on with my body. And really, even 3 years ago, this conversation was not in the zeitgeist. So this isn't surprising to me. And I'm 56, so I was having it late. But I was in a lot of pain. My hip hurt so much that I couldn't stand up for longer than 10 minutes, which meant having band practice was hard. Standing up was hard. They're playing a show, having hot flashes on stage, having your hip hurt so much you really needed a stool on stage. Writing music was like a ridiculous concept because I was just miserable. So it comes down to quality of life. And I think coming at this conversation through creativity and the ability to access the things that you value about yourself during this time of life is really important, because I think especially with Gen X, and I'm Gen X, so I'll speak to Gen X, we're really a generation that we really define ourselves by our own creativity or the creativity that we love, right? We're a very arts culture generation, punk rock and, alternative rock and music and everything. So many incredible things happened in the 90s and continue to happen when we were in our 20s. So to me, they're inherently connected, creativity and, your creative process and quality of life. And quality of life is directly connected to menopause and losing your hormones, because I didn't know that I would be castrated by my own body at the age of 52. I didn't understand that that's what was going on. It was, my mother told me nothing. I mean, not anything. And as I've learned talking to so many brilliant artists and doctors, nobody's mother told them anything. No. Generationally. And I know why now, because the boomers were literally the victims in the crosshairs of the whole WHI study debacle. They were the ones that got hormones ripped out of their hands. They were the ones that suffered the most. And here's the deal. We're the sandwich generation, Gen X, and now we're suffering from their suffering. Like we're paying the price as the kids of the folks in the nursing homes who are suffering from dementia, Alzheimer's, chronic UTIs that lead to sepsis. My own stepmother was just through chronic UTIs that led to sepsis. And it's just a heartbreaker, man. And they barely know, but my mom, there's a little hope, ladies. It's never too late to start hormone therapy. Number one, ever. It just depends on your circumstances. Talk to a doctor. My mom went through a lot of different doctors, eventually got a low dose, which she really wanted, of estradiol and progesterone. She's taking it. She's a breast cancer survivor, but her conversation was, I only have so many years left. I would like to have quality of life in my years. And the risk, which is lower than a glass of wine, is worth me taking. So anyway, yeah, lots of things in that answer, but so many brilliant people. And some of the themes are pretty clear, right? Nobody told us anything. Half people I talked to, are like, I don't really know why it's okay to take hormones now, but I'm just taking them because my doctor said I could, or I had to try 3 times. Most people had to try between 3 and 10 times, get anyone to hear them. Yeah. And a lot of times people still aren't being heard. So, I mean, I know a lot of rock stars, right? They are getting more privileged treatment than some, right? But some aren't. Like Alice Bagg in LA, she's in her 60s, especially the 60-somethings. They really don't know what's going on. They figure they're outside at the 10-year window. They've been told they can take hormones in. And, she is quitting her band, and she broke her leg and she had a knee replacement. And this is like, she's like 64, It's wild. So there's a huge cost. And I think a lot of things are really similar across the board with everybody. Even the doctors have a lot of the same stories. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it's one of those areas where we also have a lot of doctors in practice who were not really formally trained in menopause, or who are working on
understatement.
Right? Or who are working on outdated assumptions and ideas. And, that's why you might need to talk to a few different doctors, because sometimes the doctor that you might be working with is just maybe not informed enough to provide you with the right best healthcare advice, in particular as it relates to hormones. Let me introduce you to Soaking Wet from VB Health. It's a doctor-formulated blend of 2 prebiotics and 3 probiotics that promote total vaginal health, as well as 3 vitamins and minerals that promote vaginal wetness and overall sexual health. VB Health is on a mission to create supplements that work using scientifically backed ingredients. They take quality seriously, with each batch produced and tested by 2 separate third-party labs for safety and effectiveness. They even share their third-party lab results publicly. VB Health is a physician-owned and woman-owned business that has happy customers across all 50 states and over 45 countries. VB Health also just dropped a new product that I'm excited about called Energy Boost. In fact, they have a whole range of supplements to support you both in and out of the bedroom. Make every encounter slipperier, sexier, and downright sensational. It's time to get soaking wet and keep the good times coming, literally. And the best part? Soaking Wet is formulated by doctors at VB Health, and it works. Visit soakingwet.com and use code Justin for 10% off, or click the link in the show notes. Going back to what you were saying about the costs in terms of creativity, I think we can also trace a big chunk of that to the fact that sleep disturbances, sleep difficulties are a really common issue during menopause. I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but it's between 1/3 and 1/2 of menopausal women who meet clinical criteria for insomnia, right? And when you can't get a full night's sleep regularly, that's going to have a lot of downstream effects for your health and function, and can create brain fog and concentration difficulties and all these other things. And so if you're talking about job performance or creativity and all that, a lot of it can get traced back to disrupted sleep.
That was 100% happening to me. Not just the disruption of sleep, but also my hip hurt so much that every time I would shift because of that disruption, I'd be up like, oh, this hurts so much, and couldn't fall back asleep. But also hot flashes or night sweats. I mean, it's a real symphony of nightmares that occurred during perimenopause and menopause. And, you just don't know what's going on at first. And then I really didn't know. I tried with herbs. I tried everything, but it wasn't until I finally accessed hormones that things started to shift. But yeah, I mean, sleep is really a hugely important thing. And I don't think I understood that I would get it back. And especially through hormone therapy, it really was a revelation. And actually, I had a weird experience because I was still having troubles with sleep even after I got hormones, because my doctor didn't know any better than to give me medroxyprogestin acetate instead of micronized progesterone. And I did not have a good reaction to medroxyprogestin acetate, which if folks are listening and don't know, it's the synthetic progesterone. It's not bioidentical. It's not derived from yams and soybeans. I mean, every hormone is chemically synthesized in a lab, but there's some that are literally chemically synthesized, some that are synthesized from yams and soybeans. So once finally my doctor at Kaiser, and just so that she's in the clear here, she didn't know anything about hormones. This doesn't really put her in the clear, but when I first started advocating for myself, so I had to go to telehealth at Kaiser to get help at all. And some just random dude, I said, hey, my quality of life is suffering. I would like to try hormone therapy right now. And he said, yes, because I learned that if you say the words quality of life and suffering, you get what you want for the most part. Because doctors can't
Pro
really...
tip, yes.
Yeah, pro tip. It's like a HIPAA thing. Like if you say quality of life, they have to listen. So folks, you're listening. They're not listening to you. say that. Say like, my quality of life is suffering. I need help. And I know I've done the research, of course, do the research, but I've done the research and I would like to try hormone therapy. So this guy gave me estrogen, pills, which I loved. I didn't want the patch because I hate sticky stuff. So I started with the estrogen pill and medroxyprogestin acetate, but I still wasn't sleeping. A lot of things weren't going well. So eventually, after she took a seminar, snaps for your seminar, 1 hour, thank God. She's like, "Oh, well, are you still sleeping? Are you sleeping on this compound?" I was like, "I'm not. I still feel bad." So she changed me to micronized progesterone just last March. And let me tell you, that was it. Suddenly I was out. I was sleeping like a baby all night long. Between that and, the hip pain started going away, luckily, even before that, because of the estrogen, because that can help rebuild collagen. But the micronized progesterone specifically was like the mega game changer for my ADHD, for my sleep, for my brain health. Like brain fog was gone. I mean, I didn't even know. So sleep is huge. And when it comes to, like you said, whether it's you're going to work or you're trying to take care of the people around you, or, you're trying to be creative, on like no sleep, it's just not happening. And so it just feel terrible.
So I want to go back to something we briefly alluded to, which is that in recent years, menopause has kind of gone mainstream. Like it's having a cultural moment right now. It went from something that you used to hear literally nothing about to now there's a lot of mainstream media coverage. And we have celebrities and podcasts and influencers who are increasingly talking about it. And we're getting a ton of new research on the subject. So what do you think changed? Why are we suddenly giving menopause so much attention after we went so long kind of like ignoring it?
Well, I definitely have to give a lot of that credit to Gen X and the millennials. And I think that, Gen X specifically, we're just a bunch of pains in the asses, basically. And I think we were, really brought up with punk on some level, and we just don't take no for an answer. So I think, and we talk to each other, right? So we're a very communicative generation. So I really think a big part of it is Gen X, that we're just going to start talking about it. We're not going to shut up. And I want to push back on the moment concept, because I think this is really reductive of where we're at. And people talk about it like that all the time. And it makes me kind of nuts, because there's no menopause moment. We're not having another menopause moment. I'm not making fun of you. You're awesome. I'm just saying in general, the overall menopause moment discourse is such a bunch of BS, because we're having like a menopause movement, or I like to call it a movement towards hormonal justice, because it's not like just we're talking about menopause. The most important thing that I try to really impart to people is that there was a crime that was committed that restricted access to hormone therapy for multiple generations of women for almost 25 years. That should be the number one thing that we understand. And to understand that, I think cascades the rest of what will happen in the world. And tipping back into the FDA, which I mentioned earlier, which we didn't really talk about, and I would send people to my own podcast. You've probably got an episode you can name check. I'll name check mine. Go to the Menopause podcast, episode 11. I did a great interview with a wonderful doctor that's in the film. Her name is Dr. Aoife O'Sullivan. She's a menopause specialist, brilliant GP, married to an oncologist, just the best of the best. We did a whole episode called the FDA Black Box Warning, Takedown, Breakdown. And, dudes, let me tell you, like the FDA, this lawless administration did a thing a lot of good people have been trying to do for many years in getting rid of those black box warnings. That black box warning was impeding so much in every way, down to vaginal estrogen, which, is like the most benign thing. Every woman should get it as soon as they turn 40, put it in your puss, put it on your face, put it wherever. But like, it's really amazing stuff. And it really can help, especially with UTIs and all these things that we thought we were just going to get for our whole lives, right? That particular product, vaginal estrogen, which should be an over-the-counter product, that product within the black box warnings stated very clearly that it caused, quote, probable dementia. So, on top of just the hormone therapy causes breast cancer narrative, which we were sold to, this lie that was, weaponized against us, against all women for over 2 decades, truly weaponized, because here we are, in this moment with what we're dealing with. This misinformation combined with those black box warnings really just messed everything up in a massive way. So I think Gen X is really mad. And I think that we do rage better than anybody, because, we don't. Can I cuss on your podcast?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, thank God. I was trying to restrict myself, Justin. This is so much better. We do not fuck around in Gen X at all. It's a situation like, we're not going to be told no, like, oh, and if we find out that something is possible. And especially with the FDA ruling, I already knew that we were dealing with lies. I already knew that hormone therapy was okay. And, of course, talk to your doctor, see what, if you have any contraindications, all that stuff, figure out which formula or how you want to take that. HRT is another thing, patch or pill or whatever. The reason Menopunks exist is to really reflect that generational attitude about menopause, not like we were really brought into it because our mothers were experiencing this horrible crime. And so this narrative of invisibility and unfuckability and, sexual sort of suddenly you're no one, you're not attractive. You're, like there was really, I'm sure you saw it. Like it was a whole thing. Down to sketches by, Amy Schumer and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, the whole, you're unfuckable now. You're 42. Like
your last fuckable day or something.
Your last fuckable day. Right. And so, and that to me is directly tied to the prohibition of HRT because you know what? If your vagina is shriveled the fuck up, you might not have fun having sex anymore. You know what I mean? But actually, if that can be helped by simple vaginal estrogen that isn't going to give you dementia and in fact can give you the juicy puss of your dreams again, which is insane. What? Well, you're going to be fuckable again. I'm sorry. That's just what's going to happen. It's the nature is the fuckability comes back. So some of the comedians I've talked to have really put it a good way because like Margaret Cho is in the movie. She's phenomenal. One of the interviews I did with her, I was like, well, you're having success with hormone therapy. Why do you talk about not having hormone therapy in your comedy? You talk about the worst of your symptoms, not getting help. Because I'm like, please talk about getting help. We need to communicate this to everybody. She's like, the humor is in the misery, Alicia. I was like, oh. So, maybe there's not as many jokes about feeling good, but I think that, we're in a position like we're going to demand this is the deal. And especially now that we've like, I honestly felt like Don Quixote for a lot of years. Justin, you probably did as well with the whole hormone therapy conversation. Is it okay? Is it going to kill me? And no, it's not going to kill you. The actual research says this, look under the hood of the study. But like, I'm just like a musician with a cat on my lap here in Portland. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to convince anybody of anything. I mean, maybe I will, but that's not really my intention. I just want to share the facts. But the FDA on their own coming out, even in this administration and taking those black box warnings off and declaring that hormone therapy is safe, effective, and that in fact, estrogen alone decreases the chance of getting breast cancer by 23%. I mean, just like the numbers are crazy. Like you can add 10% to your life. Like the numbers are what we always thought they were. And now they're admitting to it. So Justin, this is what I always say. I say that the real mistake, they say they made a mistake. Oh, we made a mistake. Hormone therapy doesn't give you breast cancer. I like to think that the real mistake was giving us the hormone therapy back in time for Gen X to feel better and flip this motherfucking bitch all on them. You know what I mean? Like it's time, like it's women's time to rise. It's the matriarchy's time to really ascend with full power, Look, I'm a punk. I'm coming from the perspective of like, I want a better world. I refuse to live in a sad narcissist nightmare dream, whatever, this moment that we're in right now. And I won't. And so the way that I'm doing that as an activist is spreading the Menopunks word,
Yeah. And, it feels like we are living in a very significant time for menopause, right? Where there's a lot that's changing all at once, where it's now becoming normalized to just talk about it, right? Which is good. But we're also getting rid of those FDA black box warnings, which is going to open up the door for more people to receive and access treatment. We have a lot more people who are out there correcting the myths and misconceptions that people have about hormone therapy. And so I feel like we've actually made some significant tangible progress in recent years, but there's still a long way to go.
Well, oh my God. This is the other thing that happens all the time that makes me bananas is that, we have an extraordinarily long way to go. And I'm trying to supercharge the conversation because people are, it's like a slow motion catastrophic accident on the side of the road. You know what I mean? Like we're like, oh, look, all those people are dead. Oh, I think I need a banana or I should have a snack. Like people aren't really thinking about what's going on because there's so much going on. But yet I think this is a really uniting time of life because nobody unfortunately escapes menopause. You don't. Nobody escapes it. And honestly, no man escapes andropause. Mm-hmm. It's really, to me, those conversations go hand in hand. And I wish more people were having them because we need to think about how longevity and how in this era, longevity is really connected to, how long our hormones kind of last within our systems naturally. It's just fascinating, right? Because women go through this extreme drop in menopause, which is related to the fact that our life expectancy being really maybe around 50 for millions of years at most, you know what I mean? And now we're at a place that's so beyond that. Like people are living to 100. Like what? Women live longer, but in poorer quality of life, which specifically is about not having access to hormones, right? So we can feel better. Like what if we could feel better? What if, the second half of our lives is indeed the most powerful times of our lives? What if the second half of our lives is actually where we can take all the things that we learned, all the people that we know, all the power we've amassed, and then lift everybody up with that? You know what I mean? And create a society that takes care of its people and doesn't just cannibalize them and, rape them for their money and their resources, which is what's going on right now, and I'm not into that at all. And I don't think most Gen X are like, no. So like we see the boomers, they're trying to burn it all in their wake. They're in power right now. They really are like obsessed with burning it all down. And of course, we're going to be here picking up the pieces, Justin. That's just the way it is. But I hope we are able to do it in time. And that's really what we're here doing. Like my whole gambit here is activism first in making this film and doing the podcast, in forming what is now becoming a political feminist movement for change. That's the number one thing to think about. There was a crime. Everybody got screwed. Are we going to continue to get screwed? Right? This is really the bottom line. And what do we do if we say no more? Right. And I think that really relates to other things going on in society right now, whether it's our really messed up, broken healthcare system or, social services or, a million other things. I mean, these assholes who came in with the wrecking ball, there's other words besides asshole. I'm just going to leave it there. But they did a terrible thing, but also maybe it's time for a new system, right? It's time for the matriarchy to rise and egalitarian politics to be real and society to take care of all of us and not just the privileged few of us,
Something I was thinking about as I was putting together the questions for this show is that, yes, we do have more people talking about menopause, and increasingly you have more companies that are developing product lines specifically geared toward menopausal women. And the one concern that I have is that on the one hand, it feels like great that there's more options available than ever before. But at the same time, it kind of also feels like a little bit of a cash grab. And like, how do we distinguish between having greater access to genuinely helpful care versus some companies are just looking at this as, hey, there's this new lucrative market and we can sell a bunch of snake oil and run to the bank?
It's a good question. And actually one that I think we should have been asking since 2002 and even before that, because let me tell you, one of the big things that happened in the wake of the WHI misinformation about hormone therapy causing breast cancer was industry after industry exploiting women's suffering to the point of like, we have such a booming SSRI situation now because of the lack of hormone therapy access. We have such a booming statin situation because of the same thing. I would even venture to say GLP-1s. Like there's so many drugs that came into vogue after 2002 that were really kind of just for really extreme cases before, but then became, very standardized as the first line of care because there was nothing else that could be done for these women. So that was the beginning of Big Pharma really being like, oh, okay, wait. So maybe we won't make money on HRT, but that was all generic anyway. Now we can make the real money. Yeah. So I think that, you've got that, which started slow, but not that slow, and then went really fast. And now we're at like an unbelievable mass of these drugs because women in the last 25 years, a lot of things have gone wrong without hormone therapy. So there's a million things. There's bone health. So there's like a million things you can take without taking hormone therapy that can address the things, but none of them actually really address the root cause. Yeah. So that's the first nightmare with the exploitation that women have suffered because of all this. But then you're right. And this is, I would even say because of the echo chamber of the internet, it's gone to an even wilder place where people are algorithmed into all of this nonsense and you don't know who to trust. It's a huge mess. I will say a couple things I think can help people. One, we have been working with Planned Parenthood, especially Planned Parenthood Columbia Willamette, which is our local chapter. And they specifically retrained all of their clinicians to do midlife care under the gender affirming care blanket, which is another thing to talk about. But, Planned Parenthood across the country are doing this care. And that's nice because you're going to trust Planned Parenthood. They're really not trying to sell you anything. And I do think I have an issue with a lot of the doctors who I think are great and they're writing books and they're selling sex toys and whatever. All that's cool. But it is really hard to trust them. And I believe them, and some of what they say is brilliant. But then there's a lot of influencers who you're just never going to get real information from. So, part of why I even joined the conversation, Justin, was to give people who might identify as a menopunk, somebody who sees creativity in their own life or values that and values quality of life and doesn't want to take no for an answer and wants a guide to advocacy. I really wanted to be able to give people a way to get into the conversation through people they trusted. And in my opinion, Gen X and millennials trust musicians and artists more than doctors. I'm sorry. I hate to say that to you. I don't want to break your heart, but that's going to change as everything shifts. And I think, as Dr. Jane Morgan, who's amazing, who I interviewed, she's a cardiologist from Atlanta. She, in her brilliant 55 minutes on our podcast, she's like, Alicia, you got to know, we're on the cutting edge. We're on the cutting edge. You might think you know everything. You don't know anything. You're on the cutting edge. And I'm like, oh my God. And she's right. Like, there's really only maybe 5% of people who are accessing hormones right now. We're at the moment where the FDA just decided to take the black box warnings off. They're still on most of the HRT products that are going to cycle through the market for the next 2 to 5 years. So you're still going to find those warnings on it. We have to take extreme, immediate action to educate the masses about the crime and about the opportunity to change life for themselves and to transform the worlds around them, right? So, I worry about the exploitation too. I worry about all of that. And this is why I think Gen X isn't into Oprah, to be honest. Like, there's kind of the whole Oprah version of menopause, which involves a lot of Hollywood celebrities and blah, 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 selling you the cream or the face cream or the estriol or the blah, 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 and the foot rub. I don't fucking know. Like, all these people, like, they're trying to sell you something. And it's really disturbing on some level. And I feel like when you're at your worst, you're the most susceptible to it. And when you don't know that hormone therapy is an option for you, you're buying all of the herbs and all of the creams and all of the whatnot. And you spent a ton of money because, women in middle age, we usually have resources, right? So look, my hope is that realm of nightmare exploitation shifts as the populace becomes more educated, and it goes from being sort of things that they're purporting are more effective than hormone therapy, because up until last November, they could say that because hormone therapy allegedly caused breast cancer, but they're telling you it could be almost anything. Like this cream, the fact that it doesn't give you cancer means it's more effective than HRT. I mean, they really got one over on us. But I'm hoping that now that we know, now that not only us, but you and lots of people are putting this information truly, truthfully, with heart and earnestness into the world, people are getting smarter about it. And I really hope that those industries go from being, cannibalizing us into truly supporting us. Because I do think there's a lot of other things that go hand in hand with hormone therapy that can really help us achieve like maximum quality of life.
Absolutely. So true. So if somebody wants to join the Menopunks movement, where can they go to learn more about you and your work and get involved?
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you probably know, Gen X and millennials are all on Instagram. So please, I hate Instagram, but I will use it and abuse it till they rip it out of my cold dead hands. You know what I mean? Because that's where the people are. And we just want to communicate. I want them to know. And I am desperate to communicate this information to folks because I want us to have a chance at a future that is positive for everybody. So go to Menopunks on Instagram. That's Meno and Punks smashed together. You can find us at menopunks.com. That's our website. Sign up on our mailing list, which we send out every week. We tell people about the podcast and lots of other fun stuff that's going on. You can, of course, find us also on Facebook, everywhere. Ultimately, we're going to be touring the film in different communities all over the world. Ultimately, we're hopefully also going to be pulling off what we're calling Menopunkapalooza, which we did here in June and got a lot of press coverage. We want to do these shows all across the world, tour this festival that is focused on midlife women and beyond, and also about creating awareness and community around menopause and perimenopause, right? So yeah, just find us, hit us up. We're easy. We're out there slutting it up, man. We're like, we're doing everything we can. I have an amazing team. We're hopefully going to be in DC in the fall. We're really trying to activate the community. This isn't just about menopause. This isn't just about hormone therapy. This is about women rightfully regaining their power after systemically being stripped of it for over 24 years. And that is number one, what Menopunks is all about. And, gives us the energy and the hope to keep doing the work that we're doing, to see the change happen in our lifetimes. My hope is that it happens even in the next 3 months so we can flip these midterms. Hopefully live in a better world. I don't know. We got to do everything we can do. And luckily, women in this time of life, I think we have the most power we've ever had if we can have the energy to use it, so.
Great. I'll be sure to include links to all of that in the show notes. Thanks for the work that you're doing, and I can't wait for the film to come out.
Me too. 2027, probably summer, spring, not sure. But keep your eyes open and get on the mailing list. You'll hear all about it. Thank you so much, Justin. It was a pleasure to chat with you.
Thanks for your time. It was a pleasure having you here. Thank you for listening. To keep up with new episodes of this podcast, visit my website, Sex and Psychology, at sexandpsychology.com, or subscribe on your favorite platform, where I hope you'll take a moment to rate and review the show. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, please consider becoming a Sex and Psychology Premium subscriber to enjoy ad-free listening for just $3.99 a month. You can also follow me on social media for daily sex research updates. I'm on Blue Sky and X at Justin Lehmiller and Instagram at Justin J. Lehmiller. Also, be sure to check out my book, Tell Me What You Want. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.